Welcome to another edition of Dinner Starts Here. We are in beautiful weather here in Southern Alberta, standing with Rod. You're outstanding in your field, Rod.
I am.
You're always outstanding in your field, I'm sure.
Why, thank you.
We're in what kind of field are we in?
We are in a flax field.
A flax field. In behind you, you've got a pretty fancy contraption.
Yes.
A very large fancy contraption. What
Yes.
is in the field with you?
This is a center pivot run on natural gas pumps and generators. No outside electricity coming in. And it is a half-mile long.
A half-mile long, and it is watering your flax.
It is. And this water comes out of the Rocky Mountains you can see in those clouds, collected from snow melt, and then through a diverse irrigation ditch system set up about 60 years ago by the Alberta government.
Oh, really? So now, why water the flax? Why not rely on rain or something like that?
In Southern Alberta, we don't get enough rain to reach the potential that we can push flax to if we add water. So
You need it.
you need the water. It'll grow all right on dry land, and it might be half to 2/3 of the yield of irrigation.
Oh, really? Now, I mean, when you are irrigating, like, it's one of those things that, kind of pulling water. Some people might wonder about the environmental friendliness of that.
Right.
I mean, what's your concern with that? Is that an issue for you? What do you do to manage water? What are some of those things?
I consider it a precious resource, so I also feel very lucky that we have access to it through the irrigation system that was built. So this irrigation system has drop tubes on it. The drop tubes, instead of the old style where they would sprinkle from above the machine, they drop down through tubes, which leave it less accessible to the wind, and we have a lot of wind in Southern Alberta, so it drops it from a much lower height, less evaporation, less loss to the atmosphere, and so we don't need to use as much water with this machine as we would with an old style machine. We also leave all of our residue on the field. So what's residue? Residue is the straw from the previous year's crop. So in my hand I've got durum from 2 years ago, and then we've got pea straw from last year.
So basically you've taken the grain out of those previous crops and left all the leftovers on top.
Yes.
So why do that? What's the good in that?
Two reasons are main for me. One is it creates a mulch on top of the soil. That mulch protects the soil from wind erosion, and it also stops evaporation of the precious irrigation water and keeps it in the soil where the flax plants can use it.
So you basically mulch this enormous field for the same reasons that I mulch my garden.
Very good.
That's pretty impressive. Weed control too?
Definitely weed suppression.
So then, I mean, you talk about some of the crops. You said peas, durum, flax, hemp.
And hemp are my 4 crops.
Are your 4 crops. So then, now this is always kind of an interesting question. I mean, you've got flax. Why aren't you just a flax farmer? Why are you an all kinds of things farmer?
There's benefits to one crop following the other. If you grew wheat, the yield of the second year wheat wouldn't be nearly as good as the yield of the wheat that followed flax. So it's the benefits of what flax does to the microbiology of the soil. It's a different food for the worms and bugs. The peas are a legume. Legumes leave nitrogen naturally. That's a third source of food for the soil. And then the hemp is just another one that we don't quite understand what hemp does for the soil, but it all seems beneficial.
Oh, isn't that cool? That's very neat. So now I want to just kind of go back to the irrigation system because you can feel a bit of the moisture coming off on a windy day like this, and it's actually moving a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you control a system like this? Do you know how much you're watering the crop? Like, how's that all work?
We use a coring, handheld coring machine that we would dig down and do a field test, which will tell me if the soil is at 50% soil capacity, 75, and we just won't irrigate if we're within the range of soil capacity for the crop at its crop stage.
Oh, really? So just because you have this here doesn't mean you would
Nope.
use it necessarily.
Nope.
You're only using it here today because it's dry today.
Yes, and that we want to keep ahead of how much the flax will use as it gets bigger. The cost of natural gas, the cost of equipment keeps us from just wasting it.
You don't want to waste it.
We don't want to waste it.
If you could, you wouldn't use it. It's
Right.
a case of this is really for the benefit of the crop.
Benefit of the crop, and all the things I grow are for food.
Yeah.
So
Oh, cool. So now this flax field, what are you going to do with the flax when you harvest it?
we will take it back to the yard, have it cleaned, and then we will load containers for different countries for export, because I do export most of what I grow.
What kind of countries are you sending them to?
Most of
This
the
flax,
flax,
anyway,
most of this flax goes to China.
Really?
Yep. We will load ocean-going sea cans in our yard, and then they don't get opened until they hit the port of China, where they're used for human consumption and pen ink.
Oh, and pen ink.
Pen ink.
Isn't that something? Well, I mean, it's a nice crop here. Maybe we can just take a quick peek at a couple of the other crops you've got in this
Sure
development.
Sure
Cool.
can.
So, Rod, we've found another one of your crops. What are we looking at here?
We are looking at industrial hemp.
Industrial hemp. I wouldn't have actually guessed that because it looks like another plant.
That's right. That's right. Just from the books you read,
Just
right?
from the books I read,
Very
yes.
good.
Kind of has that marijuana look to it, but
But it's
what's hemp? What
hemp.
do you do with it?
Hemp is a same family as marijuana, but it has had the THC levels bred out of it. So this is called.
So you're not going to smoke this for entertainment.
No, we are going to grow this mainly for hemp hearts, which is the seed, and then the seed is dehulled and turned into hemp hearts or many of the other hemp products you see in Costco or other grocery stores.
Really?
Yeah. The straw will be saved for other fiber processes like clothing material or biofiber products like injection molding pellets.
We found the third of your four crops, Rod. What's this?
This is yellow peas. Even though they have a white flower, we are growing them for pea soup human consumption.
Really, when I buy pea soup, it's yellow peas.
It's yellow peas.
And it could have come from your farm.
It could have. They also grind it up and use it for pea powders to add protein to lots of different products. A lot of peas are exported whole too, to mix with dal and different products. But if you look deep into the pea vines, you can see the same mulch that we leave from the previous year. So this is the durum crop, the wheat crop, straw, and it's on top of there. Food for the soil, bugs, food for the worms. And I've always get told by worm people that what comes out of a worm is 17 times better to grow a crop in than what went into the worm. And that's just them eating, chewing, and leaving little castings in the soil.
So worms are very good. You want earthworms.
We want earthworms, and we want a situation where they'll grow, reproduce, and just wonderful little workers. So
we are across the road, Rod. The wind's whipping through this. What's this?
this is our durum crop for pasta.
For pasta. So durum is a type of wheat, correct?
It is.
And specifically for pasta? Like, is
Yes.
that the only thing that it's really used for?
When you grind durum wheat flour, you get semolina. Semolina is what makes spaghetti and the rest of the pastas. They do use it in a few other things, but its main use is for pasta.
Now, what makes it different than kind of any other kind of wheat?
The flour structure. So it would have other similar characteristics to wheat flour, but it has characteristics that allow it to be turned into pasta, density, stretchiness, all sorts of things.
All that kind of stuff. Oh, well, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's a beautiful spot of the country, Rod.
Yep.
4 beautiful crops. Thanks very much for hosting us.
You're very welcome. Glad you could visit.